Welcome to this webinar, hosted by SA United Employers. Additional information with regards to the various topics will be posted in the chat box to the right of the video and presentation. You may also ask questions by making use of the same chat box. Your questions, however, will not appear in the chat. They will be recorded, collated, and answered in due course. You will receive an email with the answers to the question not answered in the presentation. The webinar recording and presentation will be available at the end of the webinar.
We all heard the President speaking on the 30th of March to the general public. But I think all of us were aware that he was talking to us, the taxpayers, the people that is still greasing the wheels of the country and ensuring that the economy goes forward, and to try and calm us down and ensure that the government will put specific support systems in place. On that, I am sure somebody else will give a webinar regarding the support in that. But my duty today is to inform you about the expectations and what is required from you as the employer in regards to the safeguarding of your employees. The regulations state and the provisions of the Health and Safety Act states that it is there to ensure the health and safety of all employees at the workplace. It is not only in connection to plants and machinery or at the work or work processes, but also in terms of the hazards that may occur and that may affect their health and safety arising out of them working with or on your premises. Okay? In other words, the activities that the person carries out that directly affects his health. In that sense, COVID-19, as we all know, are a highly contagious virus agent that spreads very fast. The threat is that at the place of work, should there be a pandemic breakout, it will affect the workers adversely, as well as the member or you as an employer. It is therefore of paramount importance that you understand that in terms of the COVID-19 amended regulations, the responsibility lies with you as a member or employer to, as far as is reasonable and practical, safeguard your employees against a possible cross-contamination. You must and you are required by law to have certain checks and balances in place in order to ensure and identify possible risks and ensure that people that shows these risks or are identified as such are isolated from all the other staff, and that there is immediate action taken in order to prevent the spread and contamination of your premises or your fellow employees. Toolbox talk in the document will be supplied to you as part of this webinar. Now, this toolbox talk, and a lot of you may say, listen, this toolbox talk is the World Health Organization's toolbox. It is not related to South Africa. And in the current situation that the whole world and South Africa is in, we have to understand that we make do with the best that we have. I looked at all the toolbox talks that is currently available and even drafted one or two myself. Yet, I found the one that were drafted by the World Health Organization and that is distributed worldwide is still the best one. Now, in terms of the Health and Safety Act and the COVID-19 regulations, you must reinforce awareness of this virus with your staff each and every day. For that reason, a copy of this toolbox talk is attached and will be made available for you that you can discuss with your employees. In actual fact, you must discuss COVID-19 every single morning with your employees. There must also be further preventative measures put in place to ensure that you manage the processes at your place. And for that reason, there is a toolbox talk control sheet. Now, this was drafted in Excel by my office so that each member or organizer can personalize it with his logo or with his company name or whatever, and distribute it accordingly or use it accordingly. You will see on this document that this toolbox talk control sheet must be approved and it must be dated. Now, each day in every area of your factory, of your farm, etc., there must be a toolbox talk held with the coronavirus, with creating the awareness around your people. There's a lot of belief out there that this is a so-called white man illness, that people are only infecting other people while they are showing symptoms, etc. However, we all know very well that that is not the case. And if we are not very careful in South Africa, this can have a detrimental effect on our economy and the lives of all citizens. Therefore, after you talk to your staff every morning using the toolbox talk sheet, you get them to complete the toolbox talk control sheet. And during this toolbox talk control sheet, you also ask them, and that is why there is a section in there that says, check the sanitization, check his PPE, check whether the toolbox talk was done. Inquire about your staff's health. Does he have any flu symptoms? If your staff member shows any symptoms, or his symptoms or the checklist is completed and it does show in any flu-like symptoms, complete the COVID-19 checklist self-assessment with that person. Isolate him as far as possible and then escalate this to, on national level, to Elise Kutzer, who will then deal with the COVID-19 contamination at your factory, at your workplace, accordingly, because there is certain processes and requirements to be followed. The checklist must also be signed off daily by the person in charge of that department. Please do not use this document as a ticking exercise in order to get your people to work. We have to take this virus very, very seriously. Now, a fever, according to several medical doctors that I talked about, is only of concern once it reaches 37.8 degrees. It should then raise concern, and you should therefore complete the self-assessment check. Currently, we are under severe strain in the medical field on testing kits. I spoke to a medical doctor at one of these testing areas this morning, and he stated to me that within the next 10 days, they will be able to screen up to 10,000 people a day. However, currently, the limit is far reduced because the quick test is not yet available. And as soon as it is available, they will continue with mass testing. Now, secondly, if you are an essential service identified employer, or you need to go out in order to obtain certain services, you need to manage social distancing. I need to again reiterate that you are not allowed to go out because you're bored. You will only be allowed to go out if you are to collect a social grant, if you are to buy groceries, visit a pharmacy to obtain medicine, or go to a medical doctor to obtain medical assistance due to an illness. You will then also be, during that time, allowed to utilize public transport. But currently, the latest on the public transport situation is, according to the latest understanding regarding the utilization of social transport or public transport, is that you are allowed to use that, provided that the vehicle in which you travel is sanitized by the license provider. He must obviously have his documentation in place to verify that he's excluded from the lockdown, and that you, as the passenger on this public transport, take preventative steps to safeguard yourself. Now, at the workplace, okay, there must be sanitization processes in place. Regarding social distancing, the acceptable distance to maintain is either 6 feet or 1.5 to 2 meters. Now, in some places, at some factories, that would not be possible. If you can arrange logistically so that your people are at least 2 meters out of each other's way, then they are not required to wear a mask, and however, they will still be required to sanitize themselves each half an hour. The sanitization process needs to be explained in that we are all going and bulk buying sanitizers. The best medicine or the best sanitization product still is water and soap. Make sure that there is at all times water and soap available at your ablution facilities for your staff to wash their hands up to their elbows, thumbs included, for 20 seconds, as well as their face for 10 seconds. Please remove all cloth towels from the ablution blocks, because that could very well assist in the spread of the virus. Make sure that there is paper towels available for the people to dry their hands off afterwards. Make sure that you do not use the air-driven air dryers in the ablution facilities. Make sure that they are switched off, because if an employee is infected and he utilizes that air dryer, it can impact on the spread of the disease, in that it can travel a lot further. As soon as the virus is less than 5 microns, it becomes airborne. It is called the airborne virus. If it is less than 5 microns, it can only spread to about 1.5 to 2 meters around you. If it's airborne, it can spread up to 10 meters. So please make sure that your air dryers are switched off and that the people do not use them. Make sure that you have paper towels available for them to use, and make sure that each one discard it in a safe and responsible manner. When you talk to your staff about the sanitization, and when you talk to them in the morning during the toolbox talk, make sure that they understand that the alcohol-based sanitizer is basically there as a last resort, that they should actually wash their hands and their face every half an hour. The reason for that is, and the washing of the face is, because it can get onto their hands during that 30 minutes. They could scratch their face. They could go to the ablution blocks, or the sanitization, or the alcohol, rubbing alcohol machine at the workplace, and they could sanitize their hands. But during the last half an hour, while the virus was on their hands, they could have touched their face, and it won't be long from the time that it's on your face that you are infected. For that reason, when you also talk to them in the morning, reiterate the social distancing control sheet. That is a document that has each staff member's name and surname on. Did he sanitize? If he works in closer proximity than 2 meters, is he having a mask to wear? Okay, you must maintain the 2 meters. If you cannot maintain 2 meters, he must wear that mask. Now, unfortunately, there is a lot of masks out there. However, the only one being affected is the NP95 mask, which at this stage is impossible to come by. Therefore, a lot of people make their own masks out of cotton material or use a FFP2 dust mask. It is fine to use that mask to prevent the spreading of the virus. Remember, we must all act responsible as if we have the contagious disease and try to avoid spreading of this disease to our fellow workers. If it is at all possible at your place of work, rearrange your workload or your office furniture or your pack house or your mechanic shop or whatever your essential service you are providing, so that there is at all times at least a 2 meter distance between you and your fellow worker. Okay, this in order to maintain that social distance. Make sure that there is sanitizer available for them. Like I said, water and soap is the best. And then thereafter, the alcohol-based hand sanitizers. Again, if an employee during the discussion in the morning show flu symptoms, please escalate it on national level to SAAA head office so that the appropriate people and task force that is in place can deal with it. We also supplied each employer and member with checklists. And you will see that this checklist is listed as daily checklist, starting and again, farm employees, business employees, packhouse employees, factory employees, distribution employees, logistical employees, maintenance and workshop employees, office employees, and any other staff that is not listed. It is basically the same checklist, okay, but making it available with the heading, and then again, because it is on Excel and it is made available for you in order to personalize it or to assist your employer in personalizing it. A lot of, especially farmers and packhouse during this crisis, is required to have a COVID-19 or a transmittable disease policy in place. I did not write such a policy because there is two very thorough policies already in place on the portal at the COVID-19 documentation and communications available for such members. Please make sure that you supply them with the policies and procedure in that regard. On the checklist mentioned, you will see that every single day is listed. You must take the temperature of a staff member when he reports for duty. You can either take it in the ear, provided you sanitize the temperature meter afterwards, under his arm, provided you sanitize the temperature meter afterwards. And these days, if you can still get stock, there is the handheld temperature meter as well that measures the temperature on a distance of 2 meters. Okay? Make sure that you list the person's temperature. Again, please remember, if the temperature of an employee is in excess of 37.8 degrees, you need to immediately isolate that person. If he does not have PPE, because he does not need to maintain or work in close proximity to another person, make sure that you issue him with a mask and with gloves. The reason for the gloves, and it will not prevent the spread of the virus, and the mask is to prevent him touching his own mouth, okay, and by hands then spreading the virus. You can also, for the people in your factory or at your workplace that cannot maintain the social distance of approximately 2 meters, give the same mask and make sure that they have the mask, and they can even utilize a FFP2 mask for a period of up to 7 working days. Just make sure that at night and in the mornings, when they knock off and before they sign on, that they sanitize those masks. You get some of those masks that are now washable. The ones that I use are not washable, but I do have a vapor-based alcohol sanitizer, and sanitize the inside and outside of that mask and leave it for 2 minutes to ventilate before you put it on. Make sure that you follow this system. Again, to return to the checklist of the people, make sure that you have each and every essential employee, and even after the lockdown is lifted, that you have their details, that you capture their temperature daily, and that you monitor the situation. Again, if they show a temperature in excess of 37.8 degrees, isolate the person. Take him one side. Do not allow him close to any other employees. You yourself maintain a safe distance from the person. Do not walk up to him with the mask in your hand and hand it to him. Maintain a safe distance of at least 2 meters from the person showing the fever at all times. Walk up to him, put the mask on the edge of a table or wherever, where he can pick it up and put it on, and thereafter disinfect the area where he picked up the mask as well. Again, if he has that fever, before you escalate it immediately to the national office, do the World Health Organization self-assessment checklist with the person. That self-assessment checklist is to grade a person on whether his risk, he's got a high risk of potentially transmitting and having the virus or not. Okay, the checklist is self-explanatory. Make sure that you capture this person's name and surname. On the right-hand side, you will see that there is part of the document that is lighter. Okay, capture the person's name, surname, ID number, and date in there. So ensure you make copies of this page. And then afterwards, escalate it to national office. The problem with this virus is, and the problem with having an essential service is, that you as the employer may and will be held liable if you do not have checks and balances in place to curb the spread of the virus. And you will be prosecuted if you have no means of identifying possible risk factors. This document and this booklet that we are supplying you do have most of the documentation required in. It is, however, advisable that on the portal of SAAA, okay, log on under your organizer's login, go to case law, go to the COVID-19 section, print the COVID-19 policy and procedure regarding transmittable or communicable diseases. Make sure that your employer has that in place. Make sure that he uses this booklet. There is also a process to be followed should an employee at your workplace be identified as having the COVID-19. There is a special section created under the SAAA regulations, okay, where you must then complete, and this person will be allowed to claim from the SAAA fund for an injury on duty, or where the employee will be allowed to claim for a disease obtained or being infected with at the workplace. That is also available on the SAAA portal, and I would strongly suggest that you print one of these out, or make sure that every single member of you are in possession of such a booklet, because in that booklet it is explaining from A to Z the process regarding how to deal with the virus infection in terms of the SAAA Act, as well as the documentation. Remember, as an employer, you will be held liable to assist the government in tracing the origin of this disease at your place of work. Lastly, make sure that you do distribute masks and gloves to your people. I am fully aware that the mask and the gloves are extremely expensive at this stage. One of the pathologists that do test people told me that he now has to buy NF95 masks for close to 401 each. A normal FFP2 mask in Noordreka at this moment goes between 50 and 60 rand. So make sure that your people understand that they must wear this mask and they must be in possession of this mask for at least 7 working days. And in terms of the Health and Safety Act, if they lose it, you are allowed to get a reimbursement from them, to penalize them and subtract that amount from them without any authorization needed. That is in terms of the Health and Safety Act. So the people need to be aware that they must look after the PPE that you use, that you supply them with for this duration. Gloves, on the other hand, do not last long. Fortunately, gloves are still reasonably priced and is available on Take a Lot, for example. Lastly, I need to reiterate to you that the responsibility lies with the employer to make sure that his staff is issued with these masks and gloves and that they should wear it when they cannot maintain the social distancing distance. For example, I read last night that in Umhlanga in KwaZulu-Natal, the CEO of a call center was arrested for failing to provide masks and gloves for the staff working in his call center. He had sanitization products available, but due to him failing to maintain the social distance and failing to supply them with the PPE, he was arrested. People, this COVID-19 and the lockdown is not a joke. I said to my son last night when he asked me to best explain the lockdown to him, I said to him, you are basically under house arrest and only under special conditions and circumstances are you allowed to travel and leave your house. It will require a conscious effort from all of us to ensure that we beat this virus. But as always, I trust that us as SAAA officials will assist our members in making the right decisions. Thank you.
If you have any other questions, please feel free to ask them now. Your questions will, however, not appear in the chat. They will be recorded, collated, and answered in due course. You will receive an email with answers to the questions not answered in the presentation. thank you for your participation in the webinar.